So this next question is, if I don't activate Kundalini in 2020, is it a big problem? Or can I do it can I do it in this life without a hurry? The word hurry and Kundalini don't even go in the same sentence together. See, what happened is this is why any master can see when a being is not a master. Because truly the only high levels of mastery is Tantra and Kundalini. And if you can't plug into the Great Mother, then you can't unlock Kundalini for any prolonged periods. You may be able to take some substances and blast up there really briefly, but if anything, you'll snatch out your tether. This is what they talked to all, again, these left brain thinkers that wanted to come into the great sanctum through only learning and like this knowledge in all these books. And they were telling them, listen, if you don't got any roots, this was what Carl Jung told them. What we found out is when we get these super intelligent people, which they had reached this height of what you would say is intelligence. That was the birth of intelligency. And when they reached that height, what was being noticed is a lot of them were going crazy. They seemed to unlock the code and figure out the riddle, but they were just getting untethered and going into megalomaniac, from depression to suicide to all this stuff was happening. And so they bought in these deep, and this is a succession of this. Even Jung had only been reading about this because the alchemists encountered this problem. And they solved the problem. They showed that basically what the Hermetists were doing, because see, alchemists is the first one. Hermetics came later. The Hermetics tried to do it through just this knowledge about the metals and all this kind of stuff that they were examining from Earth. And the alchemists were trying to tell them, listen, if you don't tap back into matter and ground yourself, what's going to happen is you're going to activate it, the Therian, and you're just going to be untethered, and it's going to take you. Because it's going to be like you're going to go into a state and you're never going to be able to come out. The reality here is that we have to understand how to be able to take, maybe the word is not take, to be able to accept, there it is, to be able to accept what our great ancestors, which are, almost unfathomable at this stage, what our great ancestors are giving us in their projections and visions, but not let it override who we truly are, which you would say is the ego. You have to have your ego really small, but there and hard and able to maintain its roots while still getting the full blast of the ancestral energy revealing to you all there is. And then you need to be able to come back out of that and actually be able to ground that literally and actually make an application with it, to be able to do something with it, to bring it to life in our world. And so, again, what was noticed is when people were trying to think their way into the holiest of holies, they just went crazy because they didn't have a root. What would happen would be they would start opening up their subconscious mind, and there would be just closet after closet after closet of terror. Terror is things you don't understand, things you can't define, because how the mind works is when you're even looking around you, the mind feels comfortable because it recognizes everything that's around you, so it's able to adjust into a frequency. If you were looking around you and you recognize nothing, this is like somebody opening the trunk of the reality, and all of a sudden you see the whole thing, and you see that it's not even where you are, and where you thought you were, and you can't recognize anything. Not only you don't see chairs, you don't see couches, you don't see clouds, you don't see stars, you don't see anything that you actually recognize. So what this throws the body into is basically extreme terror. So masters know how to deal with that. They go through a process of allowing their consciousness to not always try to define everything in order for it to feel comfortable. Because we found out that if you try to define everything, you create a cage. It's what definition is. Definition is a cage. Even when we use words like trust, unity, these things are bigger than words based on the definitions that we've given them, but we try to confine them within our definitions, and that's the limitation to the language. So, continuing with this, my answer to your question is, so with Kundalini, what happened is that the Catholics and the Jesuits and these groups needed to get rid of the forbidden fruit. Everybody was aware of the power of Kundalini and Tantra. Now, when I say everybody, anyone that was looking for that level of advancement. However, it was also very clear that it was very dangerous, because even in Tantra alone, it gives you the power of magnetism, which pulls things to you. And when those things are being pulled to you, it's kind of like even like a moth going to the light. It just feels this energy that it wants to be around. And that's what's drawing it to that being. But they don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen to them if they unite with that being. And so there have been men and women alike, and there are still men and women alike, cults and covens that are still functioning, that there are leaders in there that have unlocked certain parts of this kind of tantric power. This is what Aleister Crowley even did when it went inverted. And people get sucked into that, not really knowing what they're, it's almost like you come into, it's like what you see with magicians hypnotizing people with spells. They don't even know why they're being drawn into it. And then all of a sudden, of course, the abuse starts. Then you start noticing others are there being abused too, but somehow you're still not able to get out of it. And it's because the master has somehow been utilizing this Kundalini force, tantric force, to create fields. These fields are huge. Like a field could cover, one person's field can cover the entire country. That's how big the field can get when you learn how to grow the field. However, again, you can imagine, you got, as I talked about, the 5 levels of compartmentalization, and what I call the evil avatars, the schizoids, the masochistics, the anal, the oral, and the psychopathic, right? Which are the shadows of our great traits. And that if you gave those beings, which that's what the inverted pentagram is, if you gave those 5 beings that act out in those characters inverted Kundalini power, which some of them have now, you get untold atrocities. That's why it was suppressed. So Kundalini, again, is not something that you want to hurry up and rush in doing. Kundalini is not technically described properly in the community as something that you just sit there by yourself and you try to rise only through breaths. You're getting a part of it, but actually what it's really about is understanding the as above, so below, which is the female and the male and how they connect. How if I touch a woman's hands like this, my opposite and her positive and her negative are opposite to my positive and negative, which makes us jump off. Basically, it makes us actually connect.